I know something feels different, but you can't quite name it. You're not in crisis. You're not falling apart. You're functioning, showing up, doing what needs doing. But underneath all of that, something is shifting. Something so subtle you can barely detect it, yet profound enough that you feel it changing you in ways you don't fully understand. You look in the mirror and you recognize your face, but something about the person looking back feels unfamiliar. You go through your daily routines and they feel hollow, like you're performing actions that used to mean something but don't anymore. You interact with people the same way you always have, but internally you feel distant, like you're watching yourself from somewhere else. And you can't point to anything specific that's changed. Nothing dramatic happened. No major life event. No catastrophic loss or sudden revelation. Just this quiet, persistent sense that you're not the same person you were 6 months ago, and you're not sure who you're becoming. This is the phase no one warns you about. The phase where your identity isn't breaking down in obvious ways, but quietly reshaping itself in the background while you try to live your normal life. Where who you've always been is slowly dissolving, and who you're becoming hasn't revealed itself yet. And it's disorienting. Because identity change that happens quietly, without your conscious participation, without clear markers or milestones, it's hard to make sense of. It's hard to know if what you're experiencing is growth or regression, healing or unraveling, transformation or just slow erosion of self. You keep waiting for clarity. For some moment when you'll understand what's happening. For the fog to lift and reveal who you're becoming. But the clarity doesn't come. The fog just persists. And you keep moving through your days feeling like a stranger to yourself, not sure if that's concerning or exactly what's supposed to happen. And here's what makes this phase so difficult. You can't talk about it. Because how do you explain to someone that you feel like you're changing but you can't identify what's changing? How do you articulate that you don't know who you are anymore when on the surface everything looks the same? How do you convey the profound disorientation of your identity quietly reshaping while you're trying to maintain the appearance of consistency? People need concrete things to respond to. They need you to say, "This happened and now I feel this way." But nothing happened. You just woke up one day and realized you don't quite recognize yourself anymore. That the things that used to feel important don't. That the person you've been doesn't fit the same way. That something fundamental is reorganizing itself and you have no control over it. And when you try to explain that, people offer solutions. They tell you to reconnect with yourself. To remember who you really are. To get back to your core. But that's exactly the problem. Your core is what's shifting. The foundation of your identity is what's being quietly reshaped. There's no stable, real you to get back to because the you that was stable is dissolving. So you stop trying to explain it. You keep the experience private. You navigate this identity shift alone, trying to appear consistent on the outside while everything inside is reorganizing itself in ways you don't understand and can't control. And what's actually happening, the thing you can't see because it's happening at a level beneath conscious awareness, is that your nervous system is updating your sense of self. It's integrating experiences and changes and growth that accumulated faster than your identity could consciously absorb. And now it's doing the slow work of reorganizing who you understand yourself to be to match who you've actually become. Because identity doesn't update in real time. It lags behind your actual growth. You change gradually through experiences and choices and challenges, but your sense of who you are, your internal narrative about yourself, that updates much more slowly. And eventually, the gap between who you actually are and who you think you are becomes too wide. Your nervous system can't maintain the old identity structure anymore because it no longer matches the reality of who you've become. So it starts the quiet process of reshaping your identity to align with your current self. And that process is invisible to you. You don't get to participate in it consciously. You don't get to direct it or control it or even fully understand it while it's happening. You just experience the effects. The disorientation. The sense of not recognizing yourself. The feeling that something fundamental is changing but you can't pinpoint what. And your mind tries to make sense of it. It creates narratives. Maybe you're depressed. Maybe you're having an identity crisis. Maybe you're lost. Maybe something is wrong. It searches for explanations because the mind needs to understand, needs to categorize, needs to make this shapeless experience into something it can grasp. But none of the narratives quite fit. Because you're not depressed, not in crisis, not lost. You're just in a phase. A phase where your identity is being quietly reshaped to match the person you've grown into. A phase where the old sense of self is dissolving and a new sense of self is forming, and the formation happens so gradually that you can't track it consciously. And this phase has no timeline. It doesn't announce when it started and it won't announce when it's complete. It just happens in the background, taking as long as it takes, while you try to navigate your life feeling like you don't quite know who you are anymore. And the hardest part is that you can't speed it up. You can't make your identity reshape faster just because the ambiguity is uncomfortable. You can't force clarity when you're in a phase that requires ambiguity. You can't make yourself solid when you're supposed to be fluid. You can only be in it. In the quiet reshaping. In the slow dissolution of old identity and gradual formation of new identity. In the uncomfortable space where you're becoming someone you don't recognize yet. And everything in you wants to resist this. Wants to grab onto the old identity even though it doesn't fit anymore. Wants to force the new identity to reveal itself even though it's not formed yet. Wants to skip this entire phase and just wake up knowing who you are again. But you can't skip it. Because this is where the real transformation happens. Not in the dramatic moments of change, but in the quiet months where your nervous system slowly, invisibly updates your entire sense of self to align with who you've actually become. And the only way through is to let it happen. To stop resisting the feeling of not knowing who you are. To stop trying to grab onto some stable identity when you're in a phase of identity fluidity. To stop making the disorientation mean something is wrong. Because nothing is wrong. You're just in the reshaping phase. The phase where who you were is making way for who you're becoming. The phase where your identity is being updated to match your growth. And it's quiet. It doesn't feel significant or dramatic or like anything meaningful is happening. It just feels confusing and disorienting and like you've somehow lost yourself. But you haven't lost yourself. You're in the process of finding a more accurate version of yourself. A version that fits who you actually are now instead of who you used to be. And that version is forming. Right now. In the background. While you feel lost and uncertain and disconnected from any clear sense of self. It's forming slowly. Taking its time. Reorganizing your entire self-concept cell by cell, thought by thought, belief by belief. And when it's complete, when the reshaping finishes, you won't wake up one day and suddenly know who you are. It'll be more gradual than that. You'll just start noticing that things feel more aligned. That you recognize yourself again. That the person in the mirror looks familiar in a new way. And you won't remember exactly when it shifted. Because it shifted so slowly, so quietly, over all these months of feeling like you didn't know who you were. But it will have shifted. And you'll be someone new. Not dramatically different. Just updated. More aligned with who you've grown into. More accurate to who you actually are. And this quiet reshaping phase, this period of disorientation and not knowing, will have been the space where that alignment happened. Not through your effort. Not through your understanding. Just through the quiet, invisible work your nervous system was doing all along. Reshaping your identity. Updating your sense of self. Bringing who you think you are into alignment with who you actually are. That's what this phase is doing. Even though it feels like nothing. Even though it feels like you're just lost and confused and waiting for clarity that never comes. You're not lost. You're being reshaped. Quietly. Invisibly. At a pace you can't control. And the reshaping is exactly what needs to happen. Even though it's uncomfortable. Even though it makes you question everything. Even though you wish you could just skip to the part where you know who you are again. You can't skip it. You can only be in it. In the quiet reshaping. In the slow dissolution and gradual reformation. In the phase that's changing you in ways you won't fully understand until it's complete. So be here. In the not knowing. In the disorientation. In the space where your identity is fluid instead of fixed. And trust that something essential is happening. Even when you can't see it. Even when it just feels like confusion. Your identity is being reshaped. To fit who you've become. To align with your growth. To update your sense of self to match your actual self. And that's quiet work. Invisible work. Work that doesn't produce clarity or certainty or any immediate sense of progress. But it's the most important work. Because without it, you'd be carrying an outdated identity that doesn't fit anymore. And that misalignment would create suffering in ways you might not even recognize. So the reshaping is a gift. Even though it doesn't feel like one. Even though it feels like losing yourself. You're not losing yourself. You're becoming a more accurate version of yourself. And that becoming happens in this quiet phase where nothing seems clear and everything feels uncertain. Be in it. Without fighting it. Without trying to speed it up. Without making it mean something is wrong. You're in the phase that quietly reshapes identity. And it's supposed to feel disorienting. It's supposed to leave you uncertain of who you are. Because that uncertainty is the space where the reshaping happens. In the gap between old identity and new identity. In the formless place where everything is reorganizing itself. And when it's done, you'll know who you are again. Not the old version. A new version. One that fits better. One that's more aligned. One that actually matches who you've grown into. But not yet. Right now, you're in the reshaping. In the quiet, invisible process of becoming. And that's exactly where you need to be.